So if I had to make an American citizenship test, here's the first question. Actually, here's the only question I would ask. Let's say you're a big pharma company selling a life-saving medication. All of a sudden, a recession hits, and eventually almost half the country is living paycheck to paycheck and can barely afford their rent. To maximize profit, do you A, lower prices to keep your customers and attract new ones, B, keep prices the same, or C, increase prices because you know desperate people will have to buy the medicine anyway? Even still, if you're a business or a rich person, recessions are not ideal, because one obvious problem is that eventually, at some point in a recession, especially a bad one, the middle class and the poor will run out of money to buy your stuff. As in, you literally cannot sell stuff to them because they don't have jobs and they don't have any savings to spend. To solve this, the United States actually has something called the Federal Reserve, which is kind of complicated to explain, but one power they have is that they can just swoop in and generate magical computer money out of thin air. And that's not even me trying to explain it in simple terms. There's literally just no other way to explain it. That's literally what they're doing. You can even Google it. Of course, generating magical computer money will make the dollar less valuable and lead to inflation, but you can always just blame that on the previous president. The government can then take that magically generated money and either directly give it to rich people and businesses in the form of grants or tax cuts, or they can give it to the poor and the middle class in the form of stimulus checks, who will then use that money to buy stuff from rich people and businesses. Trickle-up economics. There are usually two big things that can predict a recession before it happens: businesses struggling and people struggling. You can tell when businesses are struggling because they start taking desperate measures to cut costs and increase profits. This means YouTube putting games on the homepage to convince kids to stay on the app for longer. This means animation studios playing it safe and releasing guaranteed moneymakers like Shrek 5 and Ice Age 6. This means Phineas and Ferb getting rebooted. This means Nickelodeon brings Squilliam back to SpongeBob because it hasn't been good since season 4. This means YouTube channels who haven't uploaded in literal months or even years now suddenly starting to upload again. And this also means tech companies cutting costs by firing people, replacing them with workers in India and the Philippines for $2 an hour, and then convincing all their investors that they used AI technology to cut all those costs. When you see a lot of these signs coming up at the same time, that could be a recession indicator. Another sign is that people are generally struggling to get jobs and afford things. For example, right now, military signups are going up, credit scores are declining, everyone is going back to school instead of getting a job. People want the word job to be censored. Everything is buy now, pay later. Even a Costco hot dog can be paid for in installments. You can also pay for your DoorDash in installments. And also, in case you are struggling with rent, all of this suggests that the economy is not doing so well. But at what point does the economy go from not doing so well into a full-blown recession? Well, for that you need to look at this graph. This is the US GDP, which is the total economic output in the country. It's basically the sum of all the spending, all the investments, all the production, and all the exports too. When the GDP is going up, the economy is relatively fine. But when the GDP is going down, that is bad. If it goes down for 2 consecutive quarters, that's the widely accepted definition for a recession. These are photos from the 1929 Great Depression, and as you can see, everyone is unemployed. It's pretty sad to see. Here are some more photos from 1929, just because their copyright expired this year, so I want to use as many as possible. The good news though, is that the economy always rebounds eventually. It took about 10 years after the Great Depression, about 2 years after the 2008 recession, and in 2020, it rebounded almost instantly. But what should you do if you think a recession might be coming? And what do you do during a recession? Besides obviously starting a new business or taking advantage of desperate people, there are 2 steps the average person can take right before or during a recession. Step 1 is to not always trust the media. You might see economists all the time on TV or social media saying, the economy is a ticking time bomb, a recession is coming this year, a recession is happening right now. But if you actually go into their tweet history, they say that exact same thing every single year, just hoping that eventually they'll be right and they'll look like a genius. So if you see a headline like, economist who predicted the last 3 recessions predicts another one in 2025, just know that that economist has predicted 26 of the last 3 recessions. Step 2 is to keep investing in stocks, even if the stock market is going down. even when it's going up, even if you think a recession is going to happen, even while a recession is happening, because the stock market is not the same as the economy. The stock market works in mysterious ways. In the long term, you can be pretty sure that something like the S&P 500 will double or even triple, but in the short term, it can go up or down hundreds of points just because of a one-off event. So in uncertain times, you're much better off not trying to time the market and instead just focusing on getting a stable, high-paying job. You can then take the money you earn and shovel as much of it as you can into a simple index fund so that your money can grow over the long term and you can retire early, especially during a recession. While everyone else barely has any money to invest, you'll be extremely relieved to have a stable source of income. And that's why I believe Triple 10, today's sponsor, is a smart investment. Everyone wants to get a high-paying job in tech, but realistically, it'll take a lot of work, a lot of outside guidance, and a lot of hands-on experience to get you there. Luckily, Triple 10 gives you all of that. Even if you don't have tech experience, you can, from the comfort of your own home, rely on Triple 10 to give you courses, projects, externships, and coaching, all on a flexible schedule so you can finish all of it even if you're working a job right now. You can pick any career path from their 7 options, including AI automation, UX UI design, cybersecurity, and data science, not just coding. The job placement rate is 82% within just 6 months of graduating the bootcamp, and they guarantee that if you don't find a job within 10 months of graduating, you get a 100% refund. The way I see it, a small investment in your ability to make a higher salary works out to be a much better return than anything you could get from the stock market. You can learn a new job starting from $200 a month. Just click the link in the description or scan the QR code to start with a free career consultation. So back to recessions. If you can predict a recession before it happens, you'll know when to save up lots of money so that you can live comfortably while everyone else is struggling. Small recessions can happen pretty slowly. And unexpectedly, and oftentimes the government will intervene and tweak the economy's settings to prevent a recession before it happens. They can basically inject energy into the economy whenever they want, and that's one reason why, compared to the last 200 years, recessions are just not that common anymore. Sometimes though, there are shocks to the economy that are just too big for the government to fix, and those lead to big recessions. And if you want to predict a big recession, then what you want to look for is not just slowing economic growth, but instead something called a bubble. A bubble is when everyone in the economy is really optimistic about something, but they're really underestimating the risk factors. In 1929, it was the stock market bubble. The stock market was pretty new, and people thought it was a quick and easy way to make money and that it would keep going up forever. In just 8 years, the stock market went up by about 465%. So not only did people start spending all the money they had on stocks, but they started borrowing money just to buy more stocks, and at the same time, might as well borrow more money to buy the newly invented expensive stuff like fridges, radios, cars, vacuums, and pressure washers, which came out in 1926. But eventually, some people started realizing that stocks were way too overvalued, and that's probably a good time to sell while the prices are still high. And just like a crypto rug pull, all that selling immediately triggered more people to sell, which triggered more panic selling, and eventually the entire stock market was down by 90%. Companies started firing everyone rushed to the banks to withdraw money. The banks said, well, actually, we lent out your money so we don't have it right now. Sorry. And then as more and more people found that out, everyone started to run to the banks and try to withdraw all their money, which just ended up making the banks collapse, because obviously they didn't have the money on hand. So all the banks failed, and nobody had any money left to spend. Companies couldn't pay people, everyone lost their jobs, and this caused the Great Depression. From then on, people learned to be careful with very highly valued stocks, because they probably won't go up forever. But of course, this time is different. In 2000, a recession also happened, and this time it was the internet bubble. The internet was brand new, and everyone thought every website would be the next Microsoft. Investors, mainly just normal people trying to make money, threw billions of dollars into companies with no profits and no business model as long as they had a .com in their name. Eventually, this became known as the .com bubble. One example is Pets.com, which actually seemed like a good business, selling pet food and supplies online. The only problem is, People weren't really looking to buy pet food online back then. There just wasn't enough demand, and it was a good idea, but at the wrong time. They were selling their products at a loss, and they also spent more money on advertising than they actually made off of selling pet food.
Today I invited myself to help open gifts from the Pets.com gift center. Let me help, man. Hey Max, you're gonna give me a concussion. Uh-oh, mistletoe. Pets.com, because pets can't drive.
Yeah, in about 2 years they went bankrupt. Eventually, after the recession, people all learned from this. Just because a company has a buzzword in their name and uses some cool new technology doesn't automatically make it a good company. But of course, this time is different. In 2008, another global recession happened, but this time it was a bit more complicated. If you ask the average person what caused it, this is how that conversation will usually go. So do you know what actually caused the 2008 recession? Oh, it was the housing bubble. Okay, what about it? It burst. What does that mean? Like the housing bubble, it popped. Okay, can you explain what that is? No. Oh, why not? Okay, I don't actually know anything about it except that one phrase. So there were a lot of reasons, but the main thing was that home prices in the US kept going up and up because banks gave loans to pretty much anyone to buy a house, even people who could never in a million years pay back the loan. You might wonder why on earth they would do that, because it seems like the bank would just loan out the money and never get it back. Well, let's say you're a bank. Some unemployed guy comes up to you and says he needs a loan to buy a $500K house. You don't question it. You loan him the $500K and tell him to pay it back over the next 30 years with a little interest. So let's say in total, the guy would have to pay you back $550K. You don't actually want to wait 30 years to get paid, so you go to bank number 2 and tell them, if you pay me just $510K right now, I'll pass off this entire loan over to you, and you'll get to collect $550K over the next 30 years, so you'll make a $40K profit. Do you accept? Well, that sounds like a good deal, but are you sure that this guy will actually pay back the loan? Like, that sounds kind of risky. It's not actually risky at all. In fact, I went to an agency that assigns letter grades to loans, and guess what they graded it? B minus? Higher. B? Higher. A? Higher. A plus? Higher. What's higher than an A plus? It's AAA. Triple A. The highest possible grade. The least risky kind of loan you can get. AAA? How is that possible? This guy is unemployed. How is he going to pay back the loan? Okay, worst case scenario. If he doesn't pay back the loan, you can kick him out, take the house, and sell it for like $1 million. Because in 30 years, the house will be worth $1 million. Well, how do you know that? Because of the housing market, it always goes up. House prices always go up. Really? Home prices have literally doubled in the last 10 years. Just look. Wow, you're right. That's 1997 and that's 2007. That's basically double. But wait, what's that though? What's what? You have the line going down after 2008. Is that future data? No, that's I would never have future data. That's you see, that's a prediction for what's not gonna happen. Anyway, I have 1,000 more of these loans. I'll take all 1,000. Of course, the problem with this is that these loans were never supposed to be graded AAA. In fact, most loans in these kinds of packages were getting way higher grades than they deserved. The people doing the grading either just assumed they were safe, or they had a bad algorithm, or they just didn't care, or they just lied on purpose to make the banks happy with them. Also, home prices didn't go up. They actually started going down because nobody could pay their loans, and everyone started trying to panic sell their homes at the same time. Every bank who bought into these kinds of loans lost a lot of money. Businesses and regular people rely on banks, so everyone ended up losing money. But even still, albeit after some questionable trickle-up economics policies were enacted, the economy recovered. 2020 was different. There wasn't a really big bubble, it was more like a normal-sized bubble with a needle just flying in and popping the entire thing anyway. Even still, the economy recovered, and it recovered extremely fast. So that brings the question, what bubble are we in now? In my opinion, nothing right now can be as bad as what happened in 2000, 2008, or 2020. You might look at the dot-com bubble in 2000 and look at all the money being poured into AI right now and see that AI is also in a bubble. But while this statement might be true, if you actually look at what people were investing in back in 2000, you'll realize that it's not even a comparison. And even if the AI bubble pops, The main people who are going to suffer are the giant tech companies who already make $1 million in revenue every 5 seconds, so I wouldn't worry about them too much. But we do need to admit the economy is not doing so good. Every month, the job data gets worse and worse, but suspiciously, the stock market is going up in a vertical line. The US national debt is now bigger than the actual GDP, and tariffs are happening. Actually, never mind, they're not happening. Wait, actually, they're happening. Wait, never mind, they're not. I know the USA is not the entire world economy, but the world is so interconnected nowadays that if we get a recession here, then the rest of the world should probably be a little bit worried. Yes, even if you live in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, because after all, you are watching this on a website owned by an American company. I'm guessing, like unless this got re-uploaded and you're watching this on Billy or something. My conclusion is that if you're 100% sure there's about to be a recession, just stop for a second and think back to how few recessions have happened in the last 25 years. Think to yourself, are we actually going to have a recession this year? Or could the US government just delay this by generating more magical computer money, cutting taxes for big companies, and spending another $20 trillion they don't have?